All right, we're going to do example 3b now. So for example 3b, it's more of the same. We're told that x squared is equal to, is equal to 16 over 169. Okay. Now, in algebra, we want to do the inverse, right? So whenever we solve for x, we want to do the inverse. We'll talk a lot about this as we solve more algebraic expressions. But what is the inverse of x squared? The square root. Okay? Remember that the first one, and this sometimes confuses kids, the first one is square, and the second one is square root. Now, I will say this, as you guys start to enter into high school level mathematics, we don't write the two here, but it's implied. In other words, whenever you see a square root symbol, or technically it's a root symbol, if there's no number here that we call an index, it's implied that the index is 2. Okay? So we're learning some fancy words, but that's okay. We're fancy kids, right? So, in other words, I say all that to say that I want to take the square root of this side to get that x by itself. Well, when I do that, I got to take the square root of this side. Okay, so what's the square root of x squared? Just x, right? Now, what you may or may not know, or maybe you remember it, but I can take a fraction. This is one of the properties of radicals, is I could take the square root of 16 over the square root of 169. Okay? Now, what is one other thing that I have to remember? Whenever the index is even, whenever our index is even, we got to think of the plus or minus. We talked about that in the last example. Because when I have an even number of things that I multiply a negative by, it ends up being a positive number, right? So if I take a negative times a negative, what's that equal? A positive, right? So just because this says positive 16, I could have negative 4 times negative 4, correct? So whatever my solution is, I got to put plus or minus. And I should probably do it over here too. All right, so what's the square root of 16? Does anybody know? Yes. 4. So I'm going to say plus or minus 4 over, does anybody know what the square root of 169 is? Let's find out on our calculator. So I just showed you how to do that on your calculator. I think it's 13, but we're going to double check. So remember, to get the square root, remember that blue button, the second button, you know, on a keyboard to get capital letters, you hit shift and then you hit the letter. It's kind of the same thing on the calculator. Because I want this little square root symbol, I had to hit the second button and then hit the button underneath this little symbol. I plug in 169, hit enter, and it is, in fact, 13. Did you guys get 13? Show me your calculator so I know. Okay, good. Any questions on that one? Anybody have any issues? All right, so I'm going to take a snapshot of that, plug that in there. Remember, whatever I write down is what I want you guys to write down. I like to put this in the notes so that way you guys can see. Okay, so that means that my answer then is plus or minus 4. Oops, wrong button. How come it doesn't want to cooperate today? So this is my answer. Okay. Any questions on that one? Let's do problem number 3C. Okay. Now remember, if Mr. Adams is going too fast, just raise your hand. I see some people still writing some things down. Also, this is right out of your textbook. So if you ever feel like you can't keep up, it's on page 10. The next one is on page 10. Can I move on to the next slide? Okay. So now for 3C, and I am literally doing exactly what's in the textbook. For 3C, they write it backwards. They say 729 is equal to x squared, and they want us to find x. What does x equal? So I'm squaring the x. What's the inverse of squaring? Huh? Yes, the inverse of squaring is a square root. Very formal. Thank you. So whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. What's the one little thing I have to do with an even root? Yes. Plus or minus. Very good. Boy, I got the smart kids this morning. So over here on the right-hand side, x squared, when I take the square root of that, is just x. Now what do I have to figure out? What's the square root of 729? No problem. I'm an expert at using my calculator. I'm going to hit second. 700, was it 29? I think it's like 18 or something like that. 29. 27. I was nowhere close. So it's 27. Yeah, that's right. 27, because it's 3 to the 4th power. Okay, or 3 to the 5th power, I think. I don't remember. 3 to the 6th power. You guys want to see how awesome your math teacher is? Check this out. You think this is a game? You think I'm playing around? Exactly. Get on my level. All right, here we go. So this is, and I apologize, I got to calibrate this bad boy, but it's a little fuzzy on the handwriting. It's really hard to do this sometimes. So that is plus or minus 27. Okay, that's the answer. And now let's do 3D. You have a question? Uh-oh, we're going to do something. Oh, wait a second. I wrote it down wrong. We need to do the cube root, not the square root. That's okay, because it leads into the next one. So let me do this one other way. Mr. Adams made a mistake. That's the square root. So now, what if I have something like this? 729 is equal to x to the 3rd power. So that means I'm looking for some number that when I multiply it by itself 3 times, it equals 729. In other words, this number, whatever it is, when I multiply it 3 times, it equals 729. So in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to take what we call the cube root. Okay? We're going to take the cube root. And whatever we do on one side, we have to do on the other. Now 3, my index is odd, so I don't need to do the plus or minus. Okay, I don't need to do the plus or minus because it's odd. On this side, the cube root of x cubed is just cubed. They kind of undo each other. The reason for that is I'm saying x cubed raised to the 1/3 power. So when you take the cube root, you're raising it to the 1/3 power. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking 729, and the cube root means I'm raising it to 1/3. I don't know if you guys remember that from last year. It's okay if you don't. We're going to go over it and go over it and go over it. These are called the properties of radicals. Okay? So, anyways, how do I find this number that when I multiply it by itself 3 times, it equals 729? Yes. No. So let me show you on the calculator, okay? Let me show you on the calculator. So open up your calculator, hit clear because we put a bunch of stuff in there. And I'm going to close parentheses 729. So just so you guys know what I'm saying is true, on the first part of 3C, we took the square root of something. Well, when you take the square root of something, it's the same. So hit the caret symbol. Okay. The caret symbol is this one right here that's highlighted in red. You guys see that? And see how I got this little superscript area? It takes it up. Has everybody got that? I'm going to say 1 divided by 2. When I hit enter, that's the same as taking the square root of a number. Right? But now what we want to do is we want to take the cube root. So we're going to put 729 in parentheses. The parentheses buttons are here. You guys see those? Then we're going to hit the caret symbol. That takes us into the superscript. Okay? And then we plug in 1 divided by 3. Very good. And guess what? It's 9. Okay? So what does that mean? That means if I take 9 multiplied by 9, 9 times itself 3 times equals 729. Okay? Now, I know this is new for some of you guys. We just need to practice it a little bit. So let me take a screenshot of this, and we'll put this in our notes. Okay? So what I found out was that 9 times 9 times 9 equals 729, or x equals 9. Because this is x times x times x. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if you understand it all the way. Thumbs down if you're like, I'm totally lost. And then if you're